The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. Commander Tae-min was drinking his third cup of coffee when the communication systems in the military headquarters started screaming with alerts. Every screen in the building lit up at once, showing the same alien face. It was not a friendly face. The creature called itself a Vakran. Its skin looked like dark metal, and its eyes glowed red in the dim light of its ship. When it spoke, the translation computers turned its words into something humans could understand. The message was simple and terrible. Humans of Earth and all your colony worlds, the Vakran said, you have 72 hours to leave your outer colonies. You will accept our rule, or we will destroy you. We have conquered 700 star systems. We have never been defeated. Do not be foolish. Surrender now. The transmission ended. Tae-min stood there, his coffee growing cold in his hand. Around him, junior officers were shouting, phones were ringing, and someone was crying in the corner. He had expected this day would come eventually. Humanity had been too quiet, too peaceful for too long. Someone was bound to think they were easy prey. He picked up his secure phone and called the one person who needed to know immediately. 3 kilometers beneath the city of Seoul, Admiral Hyun-woo sat in a room that officially did not exist. The room was called the Nest, and from here he could see every human ship, every defense platform, and every weapon humanity had built in secret over the last century. When his phone rang with Tae-min's call, he already knew what it was about. He had been watching the Vakran fleet for 3 weeks as it moved toward human space. He knew exactly how many ships they had. He knew their weapons, their tactics, and their weaknesses. Humanity had been watching the Vakran Imperium for a very long time. They sent the ultimatum, Tae-min said. Good, Hyun-woo replied. Send Protocol Nightfall to all stations, 72 hours. Are we really doing this? Tae-min asked. They gave us no choice, Hyun-woo said. We hoped we would never need to use what we built. But if we must, then we will show them what happens when you threaten humanity. Across human space, the message went out on channels the Vakran could not detect. Every military base, every hidden ship, every secret weapon platform received the same 2 words, Protocol Nightfall. On the colony world of New Seoul, Captain Ji-won received the message on her ship, the Indomitable. Her crew looked at her, waiting for orders. They were scared. The Vakran were famous across the galaxy. They had crushed every species they encountered. Their ships were massive, and their weapons could crack planets. Listen to me, Ji-won said to her crew. I know you are afraid. The Vakran think we will run or beg for mercy. They think our silence means we are weak. They are wrong. For 100 years, we have been preparing for this exact moment. Every tax credit that went to deep space research was really building weapons. Every commercial mining station in the asteroid belt is really a hidden missile platform. Every colony supply ship that seems slow and harmless is really a warship in disguise. She paused, looking at each face on her bridge. The Vakran gave us 72 hours. We are going to give them something they have never experienced before. We are going to give them fear. The crew began to smile. They understood now. Humanity had not been sleeping. They had been waiting. On the Vakran flagship, Fleetmaster Corvin was confident. He had destroyed 100 worlds. He had burned civilizations to ash. These humans would be no different. He watched his scanners, looking for signs of human military movement. He saw nothing. They are not even trying to evacuate, his second-in-command said. Perhaps they do not believe we are serious. They will believe soon enough, Corvin said. When the 72 hours end, we will destroy one of their moons. Then they will understand. But what Corvin did not know was that human sensors were watching his every move. Deep in the darkness beyond Neptune, thousands of weapons platforms tracked his fleet. Each platform was cold, its engines off, invisible to normal scanners. They had been there for years, waiting in the frozen dark. Lieutenant Soo-jin sat in one of these platforms called Ghost Hammer. She and her small crew had been on duty for 6 months, floating in the silence of space. They had food, water, and patience. Now finally their patience would pay off. Target locks acquired, she reported to the command network. awaiting orders. Hold position, came the reply from Admiral Hyunwoo. Let them come closer. Let them think they are safe. Across the solar system, the same scene played out hundreds of times. Human ships that looked like cargo haulers were really warships. Asteroids that looked natural were really weapons platforms. Satellites that claimed to study solar wind were really targeting systems. The Vakran had made a critical mistake. They had judged humanity by their visible military. They saw a few dozen patrol ships, some orbital defense stations, and a small fleet around Earth. They thought this was everything humanity had. They never looked in the dark places. They never suspected that humanity had learned the greatest lesson of survival. Never show your enemy everything you have. Make them think you are weak, and when they come for you, destroy them so completely that no one else will ever make the same mistake. Captain Minji commanded a stealth destroyer called Winter's Edge. Her ship had been hidden inside a hollowed asteroid for 6 years. Her crew rotated in and out of cryogenic sleep, always keeping the ship ready. The asteroid looked like thousands of others, just another rock in the belt. Inside, Winter's Edge carried enough antimatter missiles to destroy 100 ships. The missiles were special, built with human ingenuity and desperation. They could not be detected until they were seconds from impact, and they never missed. How much longer? Her weapons officer asked. 53 hours, Minji said. Then, we show them what happens when you give humanity time to prepare. On Earth, people went about their normal lives. They went to work, took their children to school, and complained about traffic. The government had not told them about the ultimatum. There was no reason to cause panic. Either the military would handle it, or there would be nothing anyone could do anyway. But in government buildings around the world, leaders prepared for what might come. President Haewon recorded a message to be broadcast if things went wrong. In it, she told the story of humanity's preparation, so that if anyone survived, they would know that humanity had not gone quietly into the dark. The hours ticked by. The Vakran waited for humanity's response. They monitored all communication channels, expecting to hear panic, fear, or desperate attempts to negotiate. Instead, they heard nothing. Human communications continued as normal. People talked about sports, weather, and trivial things. It was as if the Vakran ultimatum had never been sent. This confused the Vakran commanders. Every other species had responded immediately, either with surrender or defiance. But humans just went quiet. Perhaps they do not understand the seriousness of their situation, one Vakran officer suggested. Or perhaps they are simply paralyzed with fear, another said. They were both wrong. The quiet was not fear or confusion. The quiet was the sound of weapons being loaded. It was the sound of targeting computers calculating firing solutions. It was the sound of thousands of soldiers checking their equipment one last time. It was the sound of humanity preparing to remind the galaxy why predators should fear prey that has had time to prepare. The 72 hours continued to count down, and with each passing hour, the Vakran became more confident that victory would be easy. They had no idea that their confidence would last exactly 72 hours. After that, the Vakran Imperium would learn what it meant to threaten humanity, and the lesson would be written in fire across the stars. The timer reached 0 at exactly midnight, Earth time. Fleetmaster Corvin sat on his command throne, watching the human colony world of New Sol spinning peacefully below. His fleet of 3,000 warships surrounded the planet like a steel cage. Nothing could escape. Nothing could fight back. Open a channel to the human government, Corvin ordered. It is time for them to surrender. His communications officer worked the controls. The channel opened. Corvin prepared his victory speech, the same one he had given 100 times before, to 100 defeated species. He never got to speak. The first sign that something was wrong came when 30 of his largest dreadnoughts simply vanished from his tactical display. One moment they were there, massive and powerful. The next moment they were gone, not destroyed with fire and explosions. Just gone. What happened? Corvin shouted. Report! His sensor officer stared at his screens in confusion. I don't know, sir. They just disappeared. Wait, I am detecting impacts. Something hit them. Something moving at 70% of light speed. Corvin felt his blood turn cold. 70% of light speed. That was impossible. No weapon could accelerate a projectile that fast. The energy required would be enormous. And his sensors should have seen it coming, but they had not. And 30 of his best ships were simply gone, torn apart by kinetic energy so vast that they had vaporized instantly. 3 light seconds away, Lieutenant Su-Jin smiled in the darkness of the Ghost Hammer platform. Her railgun had just fired its first shot. The tungsten rod, accelerated by magnetic forces more powerful than a star's interior, had crossed the distance in seconds. The Vakrin had never seen it coming because light itself could not outrun it by much. Target destroyed, she reported. Reloading. Next target acquired. Across the solar system, hundreds of other platforms did the same. They had been positioned years ago, carefully placed in the orbital paths the Vakrin would have to use. Every angle was covered. Every approach was a kill zone. And now they all fired at once. Corvin watched his fleet die. Ships exploded as invisible projectiles tore through them. His shields were useless. Shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not solid metal moving at relativistic speeds. Each impact released more energy than a nuclear bomb. His mighty dreadnoughts broke apart like toys. "Return fire," he screamed. "Find the targets and destroy them." But there was nothing to shoot at. The human weapons platforms were too far away, too cold, too silent. By the time his sensors detected the muzzle flash of a railgun firing, the projectile had already hit its target. His fleet tried to scatter, but they had nowhere to go. They were in human space, and humans had turned every cubic kilometer into a death trap. Captain Minji watched from inside her asteroid as the Vakrin fleet dissolved into chaos. Now was her moment. She had waited 6 years for this. 6 years of boredom, maintenance duties, and recycled air. 6 years of wondering if the weapons would even work when needed. "Launch all missiles," she ordered. "Fire Plan Alpha. Let them see what real terror looks like." Winter's Edge opened its hidden launch bays. 200 antimatter missiles shot out, their engines burning bright. They accelerated toward the Vakrin fleet at speeds conventional ships could never match. Each missile carried a warhead that would annihilate anything within a kilometer. The Vakrin finally had something to shoot at. Their point defense systems came online, filling space with laser fire and interceptor missiles. They managed to destroy 50 of the incoming missiles. 150 got through. The antimatter explosions were beautiful and terrible. Each one created a brief miniature sun. Vakrin warships caught in the blast simply ceased to exist. Matter touched antimatter and both vanished in pure energy. Shields meant nothing. Armor meant nothing. The laws of physics could not be negotiated with. Fleetmaster Corvin watched 800 of his ships die in the first 20 minutes. 800 ships that had crushed worlds and conquered systems. Gone, just gone. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships enter hyperspace immediately." "We must escape," his surviving ships tried to obey. They turned away from New Sol, their hyperspace engines charging. It took 30 seconds for a ship to build up enough power to jump. 30 seconds that felt like 30 hours. Navigation Officer Dong Hyun had predicted this moment. He sat in a command center on Earth, watching the battle through quantum-linked sensors. He had studied Vakrin tactics for 5 years. He knew exactly what they would do when losing. He knew where they would go. "They are running," he reported. "Engage Intercept Plan Beta 7. Across the battle space, another wave of human weapons activated. These were not railguns or missiles. These were gravity mines, devices that created temporary wells of intense gravitational force. They had been seeded throughout the system, invisible and waiting. The Vakrin ships tried to jump to hyperspace. Instead, they found themselves pulled into gravity wells that should not exist. Their hyperspace engines screamed in protest. Ships meant to jump light years away instead lurched sideways, pulled off course. Some collided with each other. Others were torn apart by gravitational stress, and while they struggled, the railguns kept firing. The missiles kept hitting. Human ships that had been pretending to be cargo haulers suddenly revealed their true nature, adding their weapons to the slaughter. Captain Jiwon brought the Indomitable into the fight. Her ship had been hiding on the far side of New Sol's moon. Now she emerged, her crew ready and eager. "All batteries fire at will," she commanded. "Target the command ships first. Cut off their heads." The Indomitable was not as large as a Vakrin dreadnought, but it was fast and deadly. Its weapons had been designed for one purpose, to kill things much larger than itself. Focused particle beams lanced out, each one carrying enough energy to cut through a ship's hull like a knife through paper. Ji-Wan watched a Vakran command ship try to turn its weapons toward her. Too slow. Her gunner, a young woman named Hei-Rin, fired first. The particle beam struck the Vakran ship's bridge. The entire front section of the ship exploded, venting atmosphere and bodies into space. Target destroyed, Hei-Rin reported, her voice steady despite the violence. Acquiring next target. Fleetmaster Corvin realized he was going to die. His fleet was being destroyed by an enemy he had never seen coming. The humans had hidden weapons everywhere. They had planned this. They had waited for him to enter their trap, and then they had sprung it with perfect timing. He tried one last time to reach hyperspace. His flagship's engines finally built up enough power. The jump would take him and his remaining ships to safety. He would retreat, regroup, and return with a force 10 times larger. But then Lieutenant Su Jin fired one more time. Her railgun had been tracking his flagship for 10 minutes, waiting for the perfect moment. She had calculated his jump trajectory, predicted his exit vector, and positioned her shot perfectly. The tungsten rod hit Corvin's ship just as it entered hyperspace. The impact disrupted the jump field catastrophically. The ship was caught between normal space and hyperspace, and the laws of physics did not like that. The flagship tore itself apart from the inside, pulled in 2 directions at once. Corvin had one last thought before he died. Humanity had been quiet not because they were weak, but because they were ready. 20 minutes after the battle began, it was over. 3,000 Vakran warships had entered the solar system. None left. The human weapons platforms went silent, their railguns cooling. The missile boats returned to their hiding places. The gravity mines deactivated. Captain Ji-Wan looked at her tactical display. The entire space around New Seoul was filled with debris, bits of metal that had once been mighty warships, evidence of an empire that had thought itself invincible. "Send a message to Admiral Hyun-woo," she said quietly. "Tell him the first wave is destroyed. Tell him we are ready for the next one." But there would not be a next one. Not yet. The Vakran Imperium had just lost its greatest fleet, and across the galaxy, other species who had been enslaved by the Vakran heard the news. They heard that someone had finally fought back. They heard that the invincible Vakran had been defeated, and they began to hope. Back on Earth, Admiral Hyun-woo watched the tactical display go dark as the last Vakran ship was destroyed. He felt no joy. War was never something to celebrate, but it had been necessary. He opened a communication channel to every human world. "The Vakran came to our home," he said. "They threatened our families. They gave us 72 hours to surrender. We gave them 72 hours to reconsider. They did not. Now they know the price of threatening humanity. Now the galaxy knows that we are not prey. We are not victims, and we will never surrender to bullies." The message was not just for humans. It was broadcast on every frequency in every language. It was a message to the Vakran Imperium and to every other species watching. The message was simple: humanity had teeth, and they were very, very sharp. The Vakran High Council met in their great hall on the throne world of Vakros Prime. The hall was built from the bones of the first species they had conquered, a reminder of their power. Today, that reminder felt hollow. Executor Dalvin stood before the council, his metallic skin pale with stress. He had just received the worst news in Vakran history. Their greatest fleet, 3,000 ships strong, had been sent to conquer humanity. Now every ship was gone, every single one. 3,000 ships had gone silent in the span of 20 minutes. "This is impossible," one council member said. "Perhaps there was a malfunction? A disease that spread through the fleet?" "No," Dalvin said. "We have recovered some data from the automated distress beacons. The fleet was destroyed by the humans." The council chamber fell silent. The Vakran had ruled 700 star systems. They had conquered species that had been spacefaring for thousands of years. They had crushed empires and burned worlds. And now some primitive species called humanity had destroyed their finest fleet. "How?" another council member demanded. "The humans barely have a military. Our intelligence showed they had maybe 50 warships total. How did 50 ships destroy 3,000? Dalvin did not have an answer. But then every screen in the council chamber lit up at once. Every monitor, every display, every communication device showed the same image. A human face. The human was middle-aged, with kind eyes and a calm expression. He wore a simple diplomatic uniform. When he spoke, he used perfect Vakran language, every word pronounced correctly. "My name is Kyung-Soo," the human said. "I am a representative of the United Earth government. You gave us 72 hours to respond to your ultimatum. We gave you 72 hours to reconsider your threat. You did not. So now I will show you what your response looks like." The image changed. It showed footage from the battle. Vakran ships exploding, railgun rounds tearing through dreadnoughts, antimatter missiles turning entire formations into clouds of expanding plasma. The Council watched their fleet die again and again from different angles. "You thought we were weak," Kyung-Soo continued. "You thought our small visible military meant we were defenseless. You were wrong. We have been preparing for 100 years for the day when someone like you would come. Every mining station you saw was a weapon platform. Every cargo ship was a warship. Every peaceful colony had enough hidden firepower to destroy a fleet." The footage changed again. Now it showed something that made the Vakran Council feel true fear for the first time in centuries. It was a tactical map of the entire Vakran Imperium. Every star system they controlled. Every military base. Every fleet position. Every fortified world. Places that should have been secret. Information that should have been impossible for outsiders to know. "We know where all your ships are," Kyung-Soo said. "We know where your armies are stationed. We know where your leaders hide. We have been watching you for 20 years, and now we are coming for you." Red markers began appearing on the map. Hundreds of them. Each one represented a human warship or battle group. The Vakran Council realized with horror that human forces were already in position around 30 of their most important worlds. They were already there, hiding, waiting. "For every species you have enslaved, we are coming to free them," Kyung-Soo said. "For every world you have burned, we will take one of yours. You do not negotiate with slavers. You do not make peace with those who trade in suffering. You end them." The transmission showed one final image. It was a human warship, sleek and deadly, hovering above a Vakran military base. The base was intact, but every weapon emplacement was destroyed. Every ship in the orbital dock was disabled. The base could not fight back. "This footage is 3 hours old," Kyung-Soo said. "We have already begun. You will surrender or you will be destroyed. There is no third option. You have 24 hours to decide." The transmission ended. Every screen went dark. The Vakran Council sat in stunned silence. "This is a trick," one council member finally said. "They cannot possibly have forces positioned around 30 worlds." "We would have detected them." "Would we?" Dalvin asked quietly. "We did not detect their weapons platforms in their own solar system. We did not know they had railguns that could fire at relativistic speeds. We did not know they had antimatter weapons. What else do we not know?" Intelligence Director Young-hee sat in a bunker on Earth, watching the Vakran Council's reaction through hidden cameras her agents had planted years ago. She smiled. 20 years of work had led to this moment. 20 years of recruiting spies, building networks, and gathering information. The Vakran had been so confident in their superiority that they never imagined primitive humans could infiltrate their empire. They never suspected that the quiet refugees they allowed into their space were really intelligence agents. They never noticed the small devices planted in their communication networks. Now all that work paid off. Humanity knew everything about the Vakran, and the Vakran knew nothing about humanity. Young-hee opened a secure channel to Admiral Hyun-woo. "The message has been delivered. Their council is in chaos. They are arguing about whether to surrender or fight." "What do you think they will choose?" Hyun-woo asked. "They will fight at first," Young-hee said. "They cannot accept that they have been beaten so easily. But when we start freeing their slave worlds, when their subjects rise up against them, they will crumble quickly. The Vakran Empire is built on fear. Once that fear is gone, there is nothing holding it together." Across Vakran space, subject species were receiving copies of Kyung-Soo's message. They watched the human diplomat promise freedom. They watched the Vakran fleet die, and they began to believe that maybe, just maybe, their oppressors could be defeated. On the slave world of Talvin 4, a young Threxian worker named Kickstar watched the message on a smuggled communication device. Threxians were insect-like beings with 4 arms and compound eyes. They had been enslaved by the Vakran for 3 generations. Kickstar had never known freedom. But now, watching the message, Kickstar felt something new. Hope. The humans were coming. The humans would fight, and maybe when the humans arrived, the Threxians could fight too. Kickstar began to spread the message to other workers, quietly, carefully, because Vakran overseers would kill anyone caught with forbidden information. But the message spread anyway. Worker to worker whispered in dark corners and hidden places. The message was simple. Hold on. Help is coming. Back on Vakros Prime, the Vakran Council continued their argument. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to gather every ship they had and attack Earth directly. A few suggested negotiation. Executor Dalvin listened to them all and made a decision. We will fight, he said. We will show these humans that the Vakran Imperium does not bow to threats. We will gather our fleets and crush their homeworld. It was exactly what Young He had predicted, exactly what humanity wanted them to do. Because while the Vakran gathered their forces for a grand assault, human ships were already moving into position around slave worlds. Already preparing to free billions of captives. Already recruiting allies from among the Vakran's victims. The Vakran were going to fight the wrong war in the wrong place. And by the time they realized their mistake, it would be too late. Captain Jiwan received new orders from Earth. Take the Indomitable to Talvin 4. Prepare for liberation operations. She smiled when she read the orders. This was why she had joined the military. Not to conquer, but to free. Not to enslave, but to liberate. Set course for Talvin 4, she told her navigator. Best speed. There are 3 billion people waiting for us to keep our promise. General Bora was preparing her troops for the ground assault. She commanded the 1st Liberation Army, 20,000 soldiers who had trained for exactly this mission. They would drop onto Talvin 4, destroy the Vakran garrison and free the slaves. But they would not just fight. They would also bring food, medicine, and supplies. They would bring teachers and engineers. They would bring everything needed to help a freed people rebuild their lives. Because that was the difference between humanity and the Vakran. The Vakran conquered and enslaved. Humans liberated and helped. The Vakran ruled through fear. Humans offered friendship. How long until we reach Talvin 4? Bora asked her staff. 6 days at maximum speed, her aide replied. Then we have 6 days to prepare, Bora said. I want every soldier to know the language basics of the Threxians. I want everyone to understand their culture, their history, their trauma. We are not just soldiers. We are liberators. Act like it. The hours ticked by. The Vakran gathered their forces, preparing for a grand assault on Earth. They pulled ships from garrison duties, weakening their control over slave worlds. They concentrated their power for one massive strike. And while they did that, humanity's forces moved into position. Quiet, careful, invisible. 30 slave worlds would be liberated in the first week. 60 more in the second week. By the time the Vakran realized what was happening, half their empire would be gone. Kyung-Soo prepared another message. This one would be for the freed slaves, telling them what humanity offered. Not a new empire, not new masters, just friendship and help until they could stand on their own. He thought about the words carefully. This was important. This would shape how billions of beings saw humanity for generations to come. The assault on Talvin 4 began 3 hours after Kyung-Soo's second message reached the galaxy. General Bora stood in the command center of the assault carrier Justice's hand, watching the planet grow larger on the view screen. Below 3 billion Threxian slaves waited, not knowing that their freedom was about to arrive from the stars. Orbital bombardment beginning, Tactical Officer Sang-hoon reported. Targeting all military installations. Civilian areas are marked as restricted. All weapon systems have been programmed to avoid them. Bora watched as precise beams of energy lanced down from orbit. Each one struck a Vakran weapons emplacement, a military barracks or a defense tower. The Vakran had built their control centers right next to slave housing, thinking it would protect them. They thought no attacker would risk killing slaves. They were wrong. Human weapons were accurate enough to destroy a building without damaging the one next to it. Humanity had spent billions developing this technology, because they knew one day they would need to fight in cities full of innocent people. The Vakran garrison commander on Talvin 4 watched his defenses die. Every gun, every missile launcher, every shield generator was destroyed in the first 10 minutes. His orbital defense platforms were already gone, destroyed by human ships that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. He tried to order his ground troops to use the slaves as hostages. But before the order could be transmitted, his communication center exploded. The humans had destroyed it with surgical precision. Launch the drop pods, Bora ordered. All units execute Liberation Plan Alpha. Remember your training. The Threxians are our friends, not our enemies. Treat them with respect. 20,000 drop pods fell from the sky like metal rain. Each one carried a fully armed human soldier, trained and ready. The Vakrin tried to shoot them down, but their anti-aircraft weapons were already destroyed. The pods landed in precise formations around every Vakrin control center on the planet. Sergeant Jaehyun hit the ground running. His pod's door blew open and he emerged with his rifle ready. Around him, his squad formed up in perfect order. They had practiced this insertion 1,000 times. Now it was real. Squad 4, move to Objective Baker, he ordered. Civilian population center is 200 meters north. Clear all Vakrin forces, but do not, I repeat, do not fire near civilian structures. His soldiers moved like shadows through the Vakrin base. They had been given detailed maps of every building, every corridor, every defensive position. Young He's intelligence network had provided blueprints of the entire planet's military infrastructure. The Vakrin soldiers fought back, but they were confused and disorganized. Their communications were jammed. Their commanders were dead or scattered, and the humans moved with a coordination that seemed impossible. Every soldier knew exactly where every other soldier was. They covered each other perfectly, moved in synchronized patterns, and never left anyone exposed. This was the power of quantum-entangled communications. Every human soldier was linked to every other soldier in real time. They could see through each other's helmet cameras. They could coordinate movements down to the second. They fought not as individuals, but as a single organism with 20,000 bodies. The Vakrin never had a chance. Within 6 hours, every Vakrin military position on Talvin 4 was captured or destroyed. The garrison commander tried to escape in a shuttle, but Captain Ji-won's Indomitable intercepted him. She did not destroy the shuttle. Instead, she disabled it and took the commander prisoner. There would be a trial later when the freed slaves decided what justice looked like. Jaehyun entered the slave housing area carefully, his weapon lowered. The Threxians huddled in corners, their 4 arms wrapped around their bodies in fear. They had heard the sounds of battle. They thought the Vakrin were killing each other, or that something worse was happening. He removed his helmet so they could see his face. He spoke in their language, words he had learned over the past 6 days. "Hello," he said in Threxian. "My name is Jaehyun. I am human. We have come to free you. The Vakrin are gone. You are safe now." The Threxians stared at him. One of them, a young male named Kickstar, stepped forward slowly. He had heard about the humans. He had seen the message. But seeing a real human, standing there with a weapon but not threatening anyone, was different. "Free?" Kickstar asked in broken Vakrin, the only common language they shared. "What means free?" Jaehyun smiled sadly. This being had been enslaved for so long that he did not even understand the concept of freedom. "Free means you choose what you do," Jaehyun said. "You go where you want. You work if you want. You live how you want. No one owns you. No one controls you. You are your own master." Kickstar's compound eyes widened. Behind him, other Threxians began to cry. Some fell to their knees. Others simply stood in shock, unable to process what they were hearing. "Come," Jaehyun said gently. "We have food. We have medicine. We have brought supplies to help you. Let us take care of you, and then you can decide what you want to do next." The Threxians followed him slowly, still not quite believing this was real. They emerged from their housing blocks to see human soldiers distributing food packages, setting up medical tents, and beginning to repair damaged buildings. No one was forcing them to work. No one was beating them. No one was treating them like property. One old Threxian female approached Bo-Ra, who had landed with the final wave. The female was missing one of her 4 arms, probably lost in some industrial accident. She looked at Bo-Ra with eyes that had seen too much suffering. "Why?" the female asked in Vakran. "Why you do this? What you want from us?" Bo-Ra knelt down so she was at eye level with the smaller being. "We want nothing," she said, "except maybe your friendship if you choose to give it. Long ago, humans were enslaved too. Other humans, but still we know what it feels like. No one came to help us then. We had to free ourselves. We swore that if we ever had the power, we would help others who were enslaved. That is all." The old female stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, she reached out with her 3 remaining arms and embraced Bo-Ra. She said nothing, but she did not need to. The embrace said everything. Relief Coordinator Yoonji had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. She commanded a fleet of cargo ships filled with supplies, food for billions, medical equipment, tools to rebuild infrastructure, teachers to help restart schools, everything a freed population would need. Her ships began landing in designated areas. Threxian workers approached cautiously, still expecting some kind of trick. But the humans just showed them where the supplies were and explained how to use them. No one asked for payment. No one demanded loyalty. They just helped. How long will you stay? One Threxian asked Yoonji. As long as you need us, Yoonji replied. A few months, probably. Long enough to make sure you can stand on your own. Then we will leave. This is your world, not ours. We are just guests helping friends. Across Vakran space, the same scene repeated itself. Talvin 4 was not the only world being liberated. On the same day, 27 other slave worlds saw human ships arrive. The pattern was always the same: precise orbital strikes, rapid ground assault, and then humanitarian aid. The Vakran garrisons were destroyed quickly and efficiently. The slaves were freed and given supplies. The Vakran High Council received reports of the liberations with growing panic. They had pulled ships from garrison duties to prepare their attack on Earth. Now those worlds were being freed. Their empire was collapsing not from military defeat but from liberation. Send the fleets back, one council member shouted. We must stop the humans from freeing our workers. No, Executor Dalvin said quietly. He had been watching the tactical displays, understanding finally what the humans had done. If we send our fleets back, they will be destroyed one by one. The humans have positioned their forces perfectly. Every world they are attacking is a trap. If we send ships there, we lose those ships. Then what do we do? Another council member demanded. We attack Earth, Dalvin said. It is the only option. If we destroy their home world, their fleets will have nowhere to return to. They will have to surrender. It was exactly the wrong decision, but it was the only decision pride would allow. The Vakran could not accept that they had been outmaneuvered by a species they considered primitive, so they would fight a battle they could not win in a place they should not go. Young Hee watched the Vakran fleet begin its journey toward Earth. She smiled. They are coming, she reported to Admiral Hyunwoo. The entire Vakran battle fleet is heading for Earth. They have pulled ships from everywhere. The slave worlds are almost undefended now. Then it is time for Phase 2, Hyunwoo said. Accelerate the liberation schedule. I want every slave world freed before the Vakran fleet reaches Earth. By the time they arrive, there will be no empire left for them to return to. On Talvin 4, Kickstar stood on a hill overlooking his city. For the first time in his life, he was not working in the factories. He was not being beaten by overseers. He was not hungry or afraid. He was just standing on a hill watching the sunset. Jae-hyun stood beside him. The human soldier had become a friend over the past days, teaching Kickstar about freedom, about rights, about dignity. What will you do now? Jae-hyun asked. Kickstar thought about it. He had never been asked that question before. What did he want to do? 6 months had passed since the battle at New Seoul. Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the surface of Vakros Prime, the Vakran homeworld, and watched the sun rise over the capital city. The city was intact. No buildings had been destroyed. No civilians had been killed. The Vakran had surrendered 3 weeks ago, and humanity had accepted that surrender with mercy. The journey to this moment had been long, but inevitable. The Vakran battle fleet had reached Earth 5 months ago, expecting to find a defenseless world. Instead, they found the same trap that had destroyed their first fleet: railguns in the darkness, missiles from hidden platforms, gravity mines disrupting their formations. The battle for Earth had lasted 18 minutes. Not a single Vakran ship escaped. After that defeat, the Vakran Empire had no fleets left. Their slave worlds were all freed. Their military bases were captured. Their leaders faced a choice: surrender or watch their homeworld be destroyed. They chose surrender. But humanity had not destroyed Vakros Prime. Instead, they surrounded it with ships and waited. They gave the Vakran time to understand that they had lost, time to accept that their empire was over, time to prepare for what came next. Are you ready? Captain Ji-won asked, standing beside Hyunwoo. She had been promoted to admiral as well in recognition of her role in the liberation campaigns. As ready as I will ever be, Hyunwoo replied. This is the hard part. Winning the war was easy. Building the peace will be much harder. They walked together toward the great hall where the Vakran leaders waited. This hall, once built from the bones of conquered species, had been cleaned. The bones had been returned to their people for proper burial. The hall was now just stone and metal, empty of its symbols of oppression. Inside, the Vakran High Council sat in chains. Not physical chains, but they were prisoners nonetheless. Around them sat representatives from every species the Vakran had enslaved. Threxians, Delkins, Morphites, and dozens of others. These were the judges. These were the ones who would decide what justice looked like. Executor Dalvin looked up as Hyunwoo entered. The Vakran leader looked old now, tired. 6 months ago he had commanded an empire. Now he was a war criminal awaiting judgment. "Admiral," Dalvin said quietly, "have you come to watch us die?" "No," Hyunwoo said. "I have come to make sure the trial is fair. You will be judged by those you harmed, not by us. Humans do not seek vengeance. We seek justice." "There is a difference," the trial began. One by one, the freed species presented evidence of Vakran crimes. Genocide, slavery, torture, the destruction of entire civilizations. The evidence was overwhelming. The Vakran had committed atrocities for 3 centuries, but the freed species, guided by human legal advisors, did not seek mass executions. They sought accountability. The Vakran leaders would spend the rest of their lives in prison. The Vakran people would have to acknowledge their crimes and work to make amends. The Vakran homeworld would pay reparations to every species they had harmed. It was not perfect justice. Nothing could truly balance the scales after so much suffering. But it was fair, and it was merciful, and it gave everyone a chance to move forward. President Haywan arrived on Vakros Prime to address the newly formed Assembly of Free Worlds. This assembly, meeting for the first time, included representatives from every species that had been freed. They gathered to decide what came next. Haywan stood before them, looking at the hundreds of different species. Insectoids, reptilians, crystalline beings, and forms of life that humans had never imagined. All of them free now, all of them trying to rebuild. "I stand before you not as a conqueror, but as a friend," she began. "Humanity did not come to your worlds to rule you. We came to free you, and now that you are free, we will help you rebuild. But then we will leave. Your future is yours to decide, not ours." A Threxian representative, Kickstar, who had gone from slave to diplomat in 6 short months, stood to speak. "Why?" he asked. "You have the power to rule us all. You destroyed the Vakran Empire in months. You could take their place. Why do you not?" Haywan smiled sadly. "Because we remember what it is like to be powerless. Humans enslaved each other once, long ago. We fought terrible wars. We caused great suffering. We learned painfully that power without restraint leads only to darkness. We swore we would never become what we once were. And we swore that if we ever had the power to help others, we would use it wisely." She paused, looking around the chamber. "You are free now. What you do with that freedom is your choice. If you want our help, we will give it freely. If you want us to leave, we will leave. If you want to join together in friendship, we welcome that. But we will never force you. That is our promise." The assembly sat in silence for a moment. Then slowly, one by one, they began to applaud. It was a human gesture, but it spread across the chamber. Beings of 100 different species clapping in appreciation and hope. Chief strategist Jinsu gave an interview to the Galactic news networks, explaining humanity's strategy. The interview would be studied in military academies for generations. "The Vakran made a simple mistake," he explained. "They judged our strength by what they could see. They saw our small fleet and assumed we were weak. But strength is not just ships and guns. Strength is preparation. Strength is patience. Strength is the will to do what must be done when the time comes." The interviewer, a Morphite journalist named Ziltha, asked the question everyone wanted to know. "But how did you hide so much? How did you build all those weapons without anyone knowing?" Jinsu smiled. "We did not hide them in space where they could be found. We hid them in plain sight. Mining stations that really were weapon platforms, cargo ships that really were warships. We built our entire economy around defense. But we made it look like civilian infrastructure. And we waited. We waited 72 years for someone to threaten us. The Vakran gave us 3 days. We gave them 72 years of preparation they never suspected. Why did you wait so long?" Siltha asked. "Why not reveal your strength before?" "Because strength revealed is strength diminished," Jinsu replied. "If the galaxy knew what we had, others would have prepared countermeasures. They would have found ways to defeat us, but by staying quiet, by appearing weak, we ensured that when we finally did fight, it would be overwhelming and decisive. One battle to end the war instead of a century of conflict. Admiral Jiwan took command of the new peacekeeping fleet, a force composed of human ships and vessels from the freed species. This fleet would patrol the former Vakran space, ensuring no new empire rose to take the Vakran's place. On her first patrol, she visited Talvin 4. She wanted to see how the Threxians were doing. The planet had changed dramatically. The slave housing had been torn down and replaced with real homes. The factories were being converted to peaceful industries. Schools were everywhere, full of young Threxians learning about freedom for the first time. She met Kickstar, now a teacher, educating young Threxians about the galaxy. "Thank you for coming back," Kickstar said. The children wanted to meet a real human. They wanted to see one of the people who freed us. Jiwan smiled and spent the afternoon with the children answering their questions. They wanted to know everything about Earth, about humans, about why humans had helped them. She answered each question patiently, honestly. One young Threxian asked the question that mattered most. "Will you always protect us?" the child asked. "What if bad people come again?" Jiwan knelt down to the child's level. "We will teach you to protect yourselves," she said. "We will give you the tools and knowledge you need to defend your freedom. And yes, if something truly terrible threatens you, we will come help. But the best protection is not someone else fighting for you. It is learning to fight for yourself." On Earth, a memorial was built in Sol. It listed the names of every human who had died in the liberation campaigns. There were not many names. Humanity had fought its war with such precision that casualties had been minimal. But every name mattered. Every person who had died for the freedom of others deserved to be remembered. At the bottom of the memorial, an inscription was carved in 100 languages. They waited for humanity's response. The quiet was not submission. It was the sound of weapons being loaded. We remained silent not because we were weak, but because we were ready. We built our strength in darkness so that when light was needed, we could shine it on those who needed freedom most. Below that, a second inscription in simple words: "We are humanity." We do not rule. We do not conquer. We do not enslave. We free, we help, we build. And we remember what it means to suffer, so we work to end the suffering of others. This is our promise to the galaxy. This is who we are. The Vakran Empire was gone now, broken and scattered, but from its ashes something new was growing. The assembly of free worlds was becoming a true union, species working together by choice rather than force. Trade routes opened. Cultural exchanges began. Species that had been enemies under Vakran rule became friends. And at the center of it all, humanity stood not as masters, but as partners. They offered technology, shared knowledge, and provided protection when needed. But they never demanded loyalty. They never asked for tribute. They simply offered friendship to anyone who wanted it. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. The quiet species in the corner, the ones who seemed peaceful and harmless, might be the most dangerous of all.